different effect on you from other drinks?
Aye. I'm always fighting on it.
Do you think that you committed the offences you did because you were drinking Buckfast?
Yeah.
The people are in there because obviously they've done something wrong. And rather than take on board the responsibility for what they've done wrong, if somebody gives them the opportunity, then of course they're going to blame something.
Jim Wilson may dismiss the Parliament findings, but Alistair Forsyth is very clear about the strength of the association he found between Buckfast and offending.
It's an absolute fact that 43% of our young offenders who were drinking at the time of their offence, which was usually a violent offence, they were drinking Buckfast. Now, what is remarkable about that is that this is a product, a brand, which unusually for any product is always trumpeting how few units they sell, that they sell less than half of 1% of all the alcohol in Scotland. So it begs the question, why should it be that 43% of violent offences or offences involving alcohol in young offenders should be that one product that sells less than half of 1% of Scotland's alcohol consumption?
So the research suggests a strong association between Buckfast and offending. But is that a one-off? Is there any other evidence that connects Buckfast and crime?
Using freedom of information legislation, we asked Strathclyde Police to search their records. They found well over 5,000 crime reports in the last 3 years in which Buckfast was mentioned. And 1 in 10 of those was a violent crime.
Strathclyde Police were at pains to point out that many different types of alcohol are involved in crime. But nevertheless, is this more evidence of a link between Buckfast and offending?
The figures are fairly clear that Buckfast is mentioned in a number of crime reports, and over the period you requested, the Buckfast bottle was used 114 times as a weapon.
Does that mean that it causes violence? Or can we at least say it's associated with violence?
Well, I think it's clear from the figures that there's an association there.
There is one potential explanation for any link, and it's a matter of chemistry. Back in Parliament, a theme was emerging.
I was a completely different person in Buckfast, like hyper and all that. Or my mood swings, I just get all different mood swings there. Oh, I was staying up for 2-3 days on end, so I must have. So I wasn't sleeping at all.
Sometimes it makes you like happy, you just want to go a bounce, see your pals, party, and once you mix it, you just end up setting the nut off you.
So is there something that makes Buckfast different to other alcoholic drinks? Something that would explain those experiences? Well, one candidate stands out, and that's caffeine. A powerful but poorly understood drug. One of the parts of the Buckfast Code that's proving hardest to crack is the effect of caffeine. And to find out more about that, I'm going to have to seek expert help. I've come to see a neuroscientist who specialises in the effects of caffeine. And this is the molecule in question, caffeine. Now tell me about caffeine.
So what caffeine does is increases the heart rate, increases brain activity, increases circulation of things like adrenaline. And under normal circumstances, that's quite useful. We enjoy it. The right dose is everything. And it's not that far off going from the right dose of this stuff to a potentially nasty and irreversible dose.
Journalists aren't great at sums, so I asked Dr. Alexander to work out exactly how much caffeine was in a bottle of Buckfast.
So that tells me 281 milligrams. So 281 milligrams is quite a lot.
That's as much caffeine in each bottle as in 8 cans of Coke. And it means that Buckfast contains more caffeine drop for drop than Red Bull. And as we've seen, people do drink whole bottles of Bucky in one go.
That would disrupt your lifestyle an awful lot. You'd be feeling very anxious. You'd have difficulty sleeping. You'd have all sorts of come downs. And the alcohol in combination is going to be a serious issue. The two of them together are not going to be that helpful for you.
But even that worrying dose is dwarfed by the amount of caffeine our young offenders were consuming. And how much Buckfast were you drinking a day?
2 bottles, 3 bottles.
No, I would drink 4 cans and then I would drink 2 bottles of that Buckfast and then that would be me.
That's why I was buzzing at my head all the time.
Did you know how much caffeine you were taking?
No, I didn't even know there was caffeine in it until I got told.
So what would our expert think of consuming more caffeine than in 16 cans of Coke? Is it healthy?
It's not healthy, no. It's going to have him bouncing around all over the place because the anxiety levels, the adrenaline will be running around. He'd certainly feel very anxious and very aggressive. Not in a good state at all.
Across the world, there's increasing concern about the effect of caffeine when mixed with alcohol. The US Food and Drug Administration is considering banning pre-mixed caffeinated alcoholic drinks altogether. And health warnings about the practice are starting to appear across the globe. In fact, research suggests you're twice as likely to take advantage of someone sexually if you had caffeine and alcohol rather than alcohol alone. And there's a final important point. It's not just about how much caffeine and alcohol you consume, it's about where and when you drink it.
Context is a major influence on how drugs which affect behaviour work. So it's true that particularly drugs that affect our brains and the way in which we behave are altered by the background, the environment that we have, and the people that we're interacting with as well. If you take this in a group of young people who are routinely involved in violence, then you could see that it's very quickly going to lead to that stimulation of violence again.
So now legislators here are turning their attention to mixtures of caffeine and alcohol. And in Scotland, that means Buckfast.
There can be no doubt that caffeinated alcohol is a problem, and Buckfast itself clearly is a caffeinated alcohol product. And this is not just anecdotal now, it's not just what we hear from our constituents and see in the streets, bottles lying around. There is now evidence.
What harm would it do to your product to reduce the caffeine level?
Why should we? It's been there for 80 years, over 80 years. And why should we go about changing a recipe of something just to satisfy somebody's whim?
That attitude could have serious consequences for Mr. Wilson and Buckfast.
We need to have new legislation which will reduce access to caffeinated alcohol products because the impact it's having on communities is frankly too great to ignore. If people won't accept the problems that are there, if they're simply going to wash their hands of it as an issue, then action must be taken. I'd rather have a consensus, I'd rather move forward in cooperation, but if it's not going to happen, we can't fail to act.
So you can call it a plot if you want, but it looks like Buckfast could be facing a new battle in Parliament. The evidence I'd encountered did seem to back up Richard Baker's concerns. So far I'd been looking at specific problems with Buckfast itself, the caffeine content and connections with offending. But another issue had been staring me in the face. Something very obvious, but also potentially lethal. Here in Glasgow's East End, there's a young man who knows about this all too well. It all started as just another bus journey.
I started upstairs in the bus because it was quite crowded down the stair, and it was just me and these 2 other guys up there. And so I just sat myself, didn't bother with them. And then one of them comes up, sits next to me on the seat just opposite. And then he's got this bottle of Buckfast and he starts sort of hitting it like that off of the cushion of the seat. And I'm just kind of tensing up, like he's right in my way, you know, I can't get by him basically. And then he just smashes the bottle off of one of the green poles. He's like, "Give your phone," and he reached out with it, and that's when he hit me there. I didn't really feel it at the time. I just basically got up and I just punched him out of my way. Then I turned round because his mate was coming up. Then that's when I noticed the blood. And I was like, where's that come from? I thought it was my nose because I couldn't really feel anything. It was just pure adrenaline, I guess. I was like, it's not my nose, and I just kind of felt that whole bit of my head just hanging off.